So I was terrified of the idea of raising my rates until this happened. Now let's talk about the reason why I raised my rates. To be honest, the reason why I raised my rates was because I just needed more money. I had bills that I was trying to take care of, planning for family, and I realized that my current income was not actually going to help me to get to the goals that I had. For instance, having another child, for instance, buying a home, and it just wasn't bringing in enough money. And I did not believe that even though I'm doing good work, like people say, that meant that I had to suffer because of the profession that I chose. So that is part of the reason why I decided to raise my rates. No, it honestly speaking, it was not an easy feat. I was definitely very nervous and terrified about it, but I can honestly say, to kind of skip ahead to let you know, that I finally did it and decided I will never go back. Another reason why I decided to raise my rates was because I started to understand that I was worth more than what I was actually charging. A lot of therapists are so focused on just the humanness, and they forget the fact that they've actually been trained, they have the skills, they have the knowledge, they've paid for college, paid for tests, paid for trainings, and all these different things. And this is really, at the end of the day, a lot of things that we can actually use as justification for raising our rates. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have all of those things just before you raise your rates, but I am letting you know that if you are trying to raise your rates and you feel like you don't deserve to raise your rates, then I want you to consider thinking about some of those things. So there were a couple of things that I did when it came down to raising my rates. The first thing is that I decided on the rate that I was actually going to then tell all of my clients. Whenever I got a new client, I would give them the rate that was my new rate. This was even before I started to tell my other clients that I was already seeing that I was going to be increasing my rates. Maybe it was a way for me to kind of feel more confident and get more comfortable in actually talking about it. But either way, that is definitely one of the things that I decided to do. Now, once I was ready to move on to the next step, what I did was that I started to have a conversation with my clients at the time to let them know that my rates would be going up. They were given several months to prepare for this transition. I knew that some people would be fine with actually staying with me, and I knew that some would not be okay with it. Around this same time, I actually decided to get off of insurance panels for multiple reasons, but that's a whole nother video. Now, I have to be honest, I was very surprised that there were some people that decided to stay on and pay me out of pocket. But the truth of the matter is that we really can't identify exactly who is going to pay us and who will not out of pocket. But that's not the point. You don't need to worry about that. Your focus is going to be on you recognizing your value, you knowing what your personal goals are, and you knowing how much you need to bring in order to survive. And sometimes making adjustments in your fees is just the thing you have to do in order to get yourself to the next level. Now, I also followed up after this conversation with something in writing. So I created a letter that every person got to let them know the time frame, the reasons why, as well as the amount that the rate was going to be going to, so that they had enough time to decide what they wanted to do. And so if there were people that wanted to stay with me, then obviously as is, and I just kind of worked with them on how that payment would be done. And then if there were people that wanted to discontinue, sometimes these situations will allow people to break away because they've been so dependent on it. So I did find that as well. So as a result, I did raise my fees, and I must say that even since then I've raised them again, and now I feel more confident in saying my rates because I know all of those things and I have fought against those fears. Now, I don't mean to say that I never get nervous about it at all, because sometimes, I do still have those feelings, and maybe the feeling of discomfort of raising my fees, but I can stand on it because I know the reasons why. And I know that at the end of the day, the people that are going to be working with me, the people that want to work with me, and people that see that by working with me, that they can have a transformation, that they're going to see that, and then we can move forward with their services. So if I want you to take anything from this conversation, and that is for you to know your value and not your fear. Don't worry about how it feels inside, because we're not trying to be regulated or directed or influenced by our emotions. We want to actually think through the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And it's not just so that we can capitalize on everything, so we can make people feel less than, or just so that we are just trying to kind of consume so much cash. But we know that we need money to live. And there's also things that we have to be able to work towards as well. And at the end of the day, a lot of these things that we want to do takes money. So know your value and not your fear. Take care, Authentic Therapist. Bye-bye.